everyone, I'm Claire Liu, and I'm the CEO of Know Your Company, and I am so excited and honored to have a really special guest today on The Heartbeat. I have Ryan Carson, who is the founder and CEO of Treehouse, which I'm sure if you're like me, you've definitely used. If you've tried to learn how to code or dabbled around learning to be more technical, yeah, you've definitely checked out Treehouse. But I've been a big fan of Ryan's for a while. I believe we met at a conference a few years ago in New York. Yeah, 9090 we both spoke at, and so that was super rad. And yeah, I've been most impressed recently with, I know your guys' efforts around both just really working to help retain and build out more diverse and inclusive talent in tech. So I think that's, yeah, really cool. And thanks so much for being here, Ryan.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat. I love what you built, and I'm impressed with you as an entrepreneur and as a person, so it's always fun to chat.
Oh, I will take that. Thank you. But I'm here to pick your brain. Well, I'm here to pick your brain, though, today, Ryan. I've got this one question that I've been asking leaders that I admire, and it is, what's something you wish you would have learned earlier as a leader?
Oh, boy. There's a lot. Can I have 20 answers?
Yeah, probably write several books about this one.
Yeah, the most important thing I've learned is I needed to build trust. And trust unlocks the ability to be successful. So let me explain. So, I built Treehouse from scratch. It was an idea my wife and I had because we're extremely passionate about empowering people with education. So, I got a computer science degree, then I got a job, and then I realized the system was broken, and a lot of people, millions of people, were getting hurt by that system. And so we thought, let's change it. So like most people, had an idea, didn't know how to do it, and just started trying, and ended up right idea at the right time. So we grew, and we had success early, and then we had many years of hardship and success. Then it got interesting. But I always thought you could just be kind of charismatic, and that's what you needed as a leader. And it turns out that's not true. So people kind of don't care about charisma in their leaders. They want someone they can trust. And then as soon as you trust someone, then you can work really hard and be really effective and be really passionate about what you do. But if you don't have that basic level of trust, everything slows down to just, like wading through, molasses.
Absolutely.
And so I kind of paid that price because I thought, I just need to tell everybody like where we're going and be charismatic about it, and everything will work out. And it turns out that's not true. So trust is absolutely everything.
I love that answer because I think it is instinctive for many leaders of, I need to build trust. But what you really made a clear delineation between, Ryan, is trust is not, though, charisma.
Yeah, it's totally different.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about that. Like, when you, first of all, like, what is trust? Like, how do you build it, right? Like, because if it's different than charisma, because I think some people think, well, trust is being friendly, right? It's sharing being hobbies with people. It's being liked. It's making jokes. It's like, isn't that charisma? Like, isn't that actually how you build trust? So tell me, in your mind, then, how are they different?
Okay, so so we have 80 employees now, and as we grew, what happened is what was in my mind wasn't being communicated to everybody in depth enough. So, I knew exactly where we were going and why we were doing it, and so I just wanted to get there as fast as we could. And so it ended up kind of saying, do this thing. And people sort of going, I don't understand why, but I'll do it, but I don't understand why. And then you start to break down their trust in you. And And then it doesn't work to just say, well, do it, because I don't have time to explain why. And so what I learned trust is, and this basically is Franklin Covey model. There's a book called Speed of Trust, which I highly recommend. And it turns out it's kind of funny. It's actually the first dysfunction of a team that's talked about in the 5 major dysfunctions of a team, which I didn't learn that until Saturday. So I was like, oh, that's, I'm glad we worked on trust, because it turns out to be the major dysfunction of teams.
Yes.
So turns out trust is a tree. So imagine a tree with roots, trunk, branches, and leaves. And the first part of trust is integrity. Like, do you basically believe this person has integrity? At just a core level, like, are they a trustworthy person? And if you just don't think that this person has any integrity, you'll never be able to move beyond that. But most of the time you're at work and you're like, I think this person has basic integrity. I don't know them super well, but it seems like they're a reasonably, normal person. So that's usually pretty straightforward. If people don't think you have basic integrity, you got to work on that.
Step one.
Yeah, that's pretty important. So once you believe someone has integrity, then you can move up the tree to the trunk. And the next, the trunk is intent. So do you understand what this person is intending to do? So not just what they're telling you to do, but why they're telling you to do it. So maybe you're having a marketing session and someone says, like, I think we should launch a podcast. And if you don't know their intention is to change your overall goal numbers, you think that they are passionate about podcasts, and that's why they're saying that you should do a podcast, then you don't understand their intention. And then you start to not be able to trust, like, well, I don't like podcasts, so I don't like their idea. And so, and then your trust breaks down. It's like, oh man, their intent was, which is your intent, is to increase your goal number. You're on the same page. You have the same intention, right? So you have to over communicate. That's the way you solve for that. This is what I'm intending to do. This is why I'm doing it. And it feels really painful, to a leader, oh my God, I have to say this again, why we're doing this thing. And it turns out, yeah, you do. Because people can't read your mind. So,
surprise.
Then you have to say it a lot of times, because maybe their kid broke their leg over the weekend and they couldn't hear that announcement, or maybe they're going through a divorce, or maybe, there's real stuff people are going through, and just because you say it in an all hands meeting or over an email doesn't mean they heard it. So intention. So that's just about usually communicating clearly a lot and saying the same thing over and over again. So you got roots, which is integrity, trunk, which is intention. Once you build those two things, then you can move on to the branches, and the branches are capability. So you have to believe that someone actually has the tools to deliver results. So as a CEO, I could have integrity, people could understand my intentions, but if people say, Ryan's never been a CEO before, I don't know if he has the tools to actually be a good CEO. I don't know if he has the capability, the knowledge. So you actually have to have the knowledge, how to solve the problem, or demonstrate that you can get it very quickly. So that's usually a skill thing, that's a training thing, that's an experience thing, and you can get all those things. Yeah. So once you have capability, then ultimately you have to deliver results, and that is the leaves of the tree. So ultimately, a tree is no good if it's just dead bark, right? There actually has to be leaves on it. It has to be results. So in the end, after all this work, eventually our results achieved. And then it's like a loop. Then you just have to keep reinforcing the tree and growing the tree, and you got to continue to have integrity. You got to continue to communicate your intention. You have to continue to learn and get better, and then you have to continue to deliver results.
Absolutely.
Over time. Right. No one expects you to do all that immediately, but if you're on that journey and you're communicating where you're at in the journey, then you can build real trust. And this has changed my life. I can't express the difference in my work at Treehouse before building trust and after. It is just been a game changer. Because
what's an example? Yeah, like give me. I'm like change your life. That's bold words,
it's pretty,
right?
Yeah, I mean it. So, a good example is, I had a new person report to me. They were reporting to somebody else, and being the CEO sometimes can be hard, and reporting to the CEO can be hard on people because you have tons of power. You often will be kind of blunt. There's a kind of a style that's typical of CEOs, and it's hard for non-execs to report to somebody like that. And so I had done some damage to the relationship because, I was too brazen about something, or I was too, just too kind of Ryan. And so when that person started reporting to me, I said, I want to intentionally build trust with you. I feel like maybe some of that trust broke down, and I want to be very intentional about building it back up. So, are you interested in doing that? And they said yes. And then we started going through the behaviors of trust. So basically I said, okay, what behaviors are important to you to help me build trust with you? And this book has a framework for this. And again, it's not some silver bullet, but it's a way to attack it.
Absolutely.
And so the framework's pretty straightforward. I think there's like 14 behaviors of trust.
Yep.
And there's actually it's so cool. There's like a playbook. If you want to build trust, exhibit behaviors 1, 3, 8, and 10, right? And if you want to repair trust, do behaviors 2, 4, 10, and 12.
Yes.
And so we literally pull out the cards and say, okay, I want to demonstrate these behaviors to you. I'm going to work on that. And then it's just everything becomes clear. They understand my intention. Hopefully they believe I have integrity. And then we're building that tree again. And it does take time, but actually not that long. I've been working with this person now for like less than a month.
Yes.
And already, we were literally on the phone this morning. I was like, how do you feel like we're doing building that trust? And they said, really good. So I think it goes to show work relationships can be wonderful. And that doesn't mean you have to be friends and
yes.
love each other.
Yes.
You just have to have this trust, and then you can have an effective, really satisfying relationship.
Definitely. So many different pieces I want to ask questions about here, Ryan. I mean, the first is, this framework that you talk about, which is, really popularized by the Speed of Trust book, I've always found fascinating because it almost divides trust into two different areas, right? So there's one idea about trust being about character. So I have to believe you're a good person. I have to believe that your motives are pure, right? That's part of the intent piece. And then about competence, which is that it's not enough for me to like you. It's not enough for me to think you're a good person. It's not even enough for me to think you have my intention best at heart or the company's intention. You actually have to be able to do good work. If you've delivered late on stuff, if you've underperformed in the past, if you've never been a CEO before, then maybe I'm not going to trust you as much. And so I think that, back to the question around, or this idea that you pointed out of trust is not charisma. It's because it's about, like you were saying, it's about integrity, it's about intent, and then it's also about showing that you can do the stuff. And we don't separate that, I think, when we think about trust as leaders.
Yeah, and we throw around the word trust. I did for a long time without actually explaining what it means and knowing what it means. And it becomes this emotional weapon, I don't trust you. And
yes.
And that
very true.
That's a terrible thing. And what I found is it was effective for me to say, I'm a new leader for you. I'm a new manager for you, for instance. I want to build trust with you. I don't actually expect you to trust me just because I'm your boss.
Yes.
I need to earn that.
Build. Exactly. I absolutely love that. I think we take for granted that just because we are in a company, just because I have this title and you have this title, we are supposed to trust each other. And for new managers in particular, that idea that trust needs to be built, for new employees as well, that's something that needs to be cultivated, I think is so important. Yep. Another thing that you talked about is just the difference that focusing on this has made in two ways, right? So in how you sort of run the company. You talked about over communication. So I would love to hear a little bit more about like what does that look like for an 80-person company, very tactically. Do your execs sort of hate it? Like, are people on board with it? And then second, on an interpersonal level of how, like you were saying, it's actually made this one particular working relationship like a lot more pleasant and not as intimidating for this new person. So tell me a little bit about this over communication part though first.
Yeah, totally. So what we do is we created something called a 2-year vision, and we, as an executive team, we decided what is the most important thing we need to accomplish in the next 2 years, and then we broke it down into measurable goals. What by when, and then we laid it out in this beautiful poster, and we called it our 2-year vision, and it's completing on January 1st, 2020. So that was part of it. Okay, let's get the plan straight in our head.
Yes.
And then what it was is not just kind of launching it to everybody, because again that causes fear, that causes confusion. We actually just kind of start looping people in. It's not like a back channel thing. It's more, if I have direct reports, I'm going to start talking about it in my one-on-ones. Just want to put this on your radar. Me and the execs are thinking about launching a 2-year vision. This is a way we're kind of thinking about it. Do you have any thoughts on that? And you're getting people like used to ideas, and then give them chance to give feedback.
Yes.
And then that flows down through the company. Like, oh, okay, we're going to launch this thing called a 2-year vision. Yeah, I've kind of heard about it. I've talked a little bit about it to my manager. So by the time it comes out, you're like, I already kind of know about this. This is like, this is kind of cool. And maybe I even said something that got kind of input into it. So that's part of it. Over communicate, like as you're thinking about things, is great.
Yes.
And that's not always possible, but on a lot of things it is. And then that's one thing I underestimated the value of like telling people to be aware that things are going to happen. Man, massive value.
That's I have to pause on that for a second, Ryan, because I can't tell you how many leaders that we work with and that I speak to, how many CEOs who they talk about the value of over communication, but it's almost like, here's the plan, we're just going to take the script and just sort of repeat it as much as possible. And what you're saying is, well, no, there's actually a step before that, which is to sort of slowly get people's buy-in. And it may seem like it takes more time, but you're actually building trust by slowly unpacking and getting people's ideas and kind of germinating the idea before it actually becomes a thing.
Yes. Yeah, it does. It probably takes like 2 more weeks, to kind of roll that out and get people talking about it. But it turns out like you weren't going to do anything in 2 weeks anyway. Like that really changed anything anyway. So,
yes.
It's like the whole, actually let's think about what we're going to do in a year, and the next, 2 weeks, not much is going to happen. That's okay. So the pre-talk is important. And then what we do now is every month we have an all hands meeting. We're a distributed company, so we use Zoom for that. We do have offices, so we have about 30 people in Portland, about 15 I think in Orlando. Everyone else works from home around the United States. So we have a big Zoom call, and every month we say, let's talk about the 2-year vision. We're actually going to remind you what it is. So we like go through the slides. I'm like, okay, our mission is this, this is the 2-year vision. Okay, these are the big numbers. Okay, let's talk about each number. How are we doing? And then we update how we're doing on the number. And it turns out we actually had to change some of the numbers. And everyone might think, oh, that's terrible. Shouldn't you should never change your numbers if you've got It's like, no, that's not true, because we learned some stuff, and it turns out some of our numbers were wrong. But then that was a process. Like, okay, how do you not freak people out when you have to change your plan? So that was, again, like, well, let's tell everybody, like, slowly. And so at the all hands, we would say things like, well, here's the chart we've been showing you, but actually here's an interesting chart, that we've been thinking about measuring it this way. We just want to show everybody kind of how we're thinking about it. We're not changing the official number yet, but we just want you to know, like, we're learning some stuff.
We're starting to think about just different ways.
We're learning, and here's what we're learning, and everyone's like, oh, okay, we're learning stuff. And then, you say it, we did that for like 2 or 3 months. And then eventually we're like, okay, we've been talking about this for 2 or 3 months. We're just going to make it official now. And everyone's like, great. And it's so crazy, Claire. Like, there's no drama. Like, you know, I was like, oh, it's going to be drama. No.
Yeah, I was waiting for that, Ryan. I was waiting for you to be like, okay, and so we did this, and then, you know, but you're like, no drama. It's easy.
It was like, is there any questions? Everyone's like, not really. Like, we get it. I'm like, good, we're over-communicating. So.
Yeah, mission accomplished. I love that. So it's like 2 processes of like the pre-talk part that you're saying, and then when you are, you know, again, just about to make a decision, just sort of slowing it down, you know, revealing your process. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I think, go for it.
Well, I was going to say, we're not perfect either, so it sounds perfect, but, you know, I just found out in a one-on-one that I hadn't been communicating something enough. It's like, oh, gosh, I thought I was, but I wasn't. So it's a constant process of trying to get better.
Always. But what's really interesting even about that situation is that someone told you, right?
Yeah,
like
you're right. True, that's good.
That's amazing, because what happens 9 times out of 10, at least with the CEOs that we talk to, is that no one tells them that they should have been communicating something more. So the fact that you even have sort of a check or a system for someone to tell you that, I think that's the ideal situation, because we all don't know sort of how well we're doing on that, on those levers. So here's my sort of last question to you here, Ryan, which is for leaders and managers and aspiring leaders who are watching this and who are thinking, yes, Ryan, in your wonderful company of Treehouse, you know, you've been able to build trust, but man, you don't have my manager, or you don't work with my team, or you don't understand what my work environment is like. How, you know, I'm skeptical about this trusting. Do you have any advice, tactics, words of wisdom, I guess, around why this stuff is important and maybe steps that they can take to sort of build trust with their employees or their team?
Yes, you bet. That's a great question. I would say, you know, if you're a manager, I'll give 2 answers. One for a manager, one for direct.
Right.
I would say for the manager, you know, you could always say, you know, hey team, hey person I manage, I don't know if we've built a lot of trust. I just want to talk about it. And actually I want to be intentional about building trust. I want to have a great working relationship with you. So here's a process I'm thinking about going through with you. You know, here's how it works. Are you interested in that? And like that would be basically running through the behaviors of trust and speed of trust book. So that's one thing. And most employees will be like, yeah, that sounds great. If you are managed by a poor manager, I would start from a place where you try to have good, just believe that this person is coming from a good place. So say like, I'm going to choose to believe that your intentions are good. And this is kind of part of the trust exercise.
Yes.
Like, I'm going to start there, even though I don't know if that's the truth. And then sit down with them in your one-on-one, if you have one-on-ones, and say, I want to build an even better relationship with you. I want to help the company achieve its goals. I know you want those things too. You know, I'd like to be more intentional about building even more trust with you. So you're not going to say like, we don't have any trust and it's totally terrible. And like, I want to create trust, because they may be like, oh, I hate that. And if they're a bad manager, they'll fire you.
Yes.
So it's about like, I want to build more trust. I want to, you know, be more effective, like kind of selling that idea. And then saying, I'm reading this book called Speed of Trust. Like, would you be interested in reading it with me? You know, and then you'll probably find this person's like, oh my gosh, I wasn't trained how to be a good manager. This is blowing my mind, you know, and then they become a better manager, and then the process spreads throughout the company. So start with one person and see if you can get it kicked off.
Absolutely. Start with the conversation, and what I think is important to highlight here is start with your intent, right? Start with your intention. So
yeah, my intention is to build more trust with you. I want that to happen, you know.
Exactly. It's not about anything else. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for sharing all of your thoughts and experience and reminding us what trust is and what we need to be doing about it as leaders. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's really fun to talk about. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, likewise. Talk soon. Thanks.